على الهوا من ميشيغان وواشنطن.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموت كنا سوا، ليوم اللي بيعتك يا وطني الغيب رح نبقى سوا.
من ميشيغان on wnzk 690 AM ومن واشنطن on wdmv 700 AM.
سوا سوا في الهوا والهمين الجاوية والهمين الجاوية.
سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير. صباح الخير أمريكا.
لما نكون سوا يا حياتي سوا، دايبين بالهوا ما تعد الساعات، ما تقوليلي روح أنا ما بدي روح، بعيونك مشلوح ليلة ليلة. أنا حدك برتاح كتير، أنا شوقي لعينيك كبير، أنا حدك برتاح كتير، أنا شوقي لعينيك كبير، يا بدي سرب بكير خليني حدك انتي وحدك بشتاق ليك.
يمكنكم الآن متابعة برنامج سوا على الهواء على قناة ميوزك لايف عبر الديش نتورك شانل 633. البرنامج يبث لمستمعين يوم الثلاثاء الساعة 8 صباحا حسب التوقيت الشرقي للولايات المتحدة في ميشيغان وتوليدو وأوهايو ووينزر كندا على الموجة المتوسطة wnzk 690 AM، ولمستمعين في مناطق واشنطن وفرجينيا وميريلاند على الموجة المتوسطة wdmv 700 AM. يمكنكم الاستماع للبرنامج عبر الاتصال من أي هاتف على الرقم 702-489-0120. يتلقى البرنامج اتصالاتكم مباشرة من داخل الولايات المتحدة على الهاتف رقم 248-557-3300. الإضافة عبر سكايب US Arab Radio. للاستماع للبودكاست ushammedia.com.
Today's show is brought to you by attorney Joumana Kayrouz.
Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
It's sad, but it seems like we live in an age where most lawyers are focused on the bottom line, the money. And a lot of people have stopped wanting to truly advocate. I'll never forget this case. This woman chose me as a lawyer of last resort. She was hit by a semi-truck. I was able to recover about $480,000. Not every lawyer is an advocate, but every lawyer should be an advocate.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on...
Of course, you've seen Joumana Kayrouz's images everywhere. Good morning, Attorney Kayrouz. Good morning to our listeners. صباح الخير خليل، صباح الخير لمستمعينا، صباح الخير سوا على الهواء من ميشيغان وواشنطن. هذا الصباح عاصف ضبابي، شو رأيك خليل؟
The weather, yes, absolutely. The weather is 43 degrees. It's raining, and precipitation is expected to last throughout the morning, and it will lift off. And they promised us, a better weather for the weekend, but for today and tomorrow there'll be some rain. We need the rain. The good news is that there is no freeze. The temperature could reach up to 51 degrees today. Right now it is 43. And the weather is better than expected. We could use some of the rain.
اليوم برنامجنا خليل نستضيف من خلاله State Representative Tim Greimel.
Greimel, yes.
He will going to be with us soon. Hopefully the traffic is really horrible outside, and he called and apologized for 2 minute or 3 minute late starting. We do understand. I came all the way from Dearborn. It was really traffic today. So do you think the a little bit rain cause of all of this, Khalil? What's going on?
I think it's the fact that it's the vision out there is not you can't really see for a distance, and the fog and all of that is slowing down traffic. And I'm glad they're slowing down a little bit, because that would if we get to where we need to get, 1 or 2 minute late, it's better than not getting there at all. So
how can we link this to the road in Michigan, though?
We will be talking about roads. We'll be talking about the Syrian refugees with Representative Greimel, and I don't think it has anything to do with roads. It has to do with being careful, and if we need to get where we need to get, we should get started a little early. Give yourself some time and get there as soon as you can, but safely.
Well, let us give our listeners a little bit update about roads and what has been really done so far. I think Governor Snyder, he approved the...
He did sign the new plan, which would allow the state to spend money on roads. The money would come from fees and from an increase in gasoline tax, and also they're banking on future growth in the state. The legislator took forever, maybe more than a year or 2 years, to really agree on a plan. The problem is not how to fix the roads. The problem is that a disagreement in a philosophy between the legislators on how to spend money. And, a lot of people think, or experts think, that, this is really not a good plan, but it's better than nothing, I guess. And our roads are horrible. The misconception is a lot of people think that the money would fix roads in front of their homes, and that's not really the way it works. The bulk of the money will go to major roads like highways and others, and then other money will go to what's called state roads. For example, Michigan Avenue is a state road, Ford Road is a state road, and then if there is any money left, it will go to county roads. And after county roads, if there's any money left, it'll go to city roads. So most likely, if your city is going to fix your roads, you're going to have to pay for it as well.
So let us try to translate this to our listeners to engage them, Khalil, with the discussion here. So اللي فهمته منك إنه يعتبر الأهم فالأهم
نعم.
في تصليح الطرقات. أولا ممكن نبدأ من الطرق الأساسية التي المتواصلة في ولاية ميشيغان اللي هي ميشيغان افنيو، فورد رود، and الميجر ستيت رود اللي بتتواصل مع الستيت من الخارج وبتكون نحن
داخل الستيت.
نعم.
داخل الستيت. بنفس الوقت the state بيجيها أموال. The state also gets money from the federal government. It gets money from other sources to fix the roads, but Michigan has had its share of bad roads for some time, and as I mentioned before, it's the fact that the legislator did not agree on how to, for some people agree for philosophical reasons. And before we continue on this topic, we want to welcome State Representative Tim Greimel. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah, Greimel.
Greimel. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and we really appreciate it. My name is Khalil, and this is Laila, of course, and we want to thank you for being with us this morning. This is please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm State Representative Tim Greimel, and good morning to both of you. It's great to be on the show. It's really an honor for me to be part of the program. I represent a district in Oakland County that includes Auburn Hills, Pontiac, Sylvan Lake, Keego Harbor, and Orchard Lake. I'm also the Democratic leader, the minority leader in the State House of Representatives here in Lansing. And I grew up in Oakland County. I've lived in Oakland County my entire life. Before I went to the legislature. I served as the president of the Rochester School Board and as an Oakland County Commissioner, and I served as a labor, employment, and civil rights attorney.
Well, pleasure and honor having you today with us, sir, and thank you so much for joining. We would like to start, of course, with the plan to fix the Michigan roads. So how do you see this plan, sir?
Well, I think it's the worst of all worlds, to be honest with you. It raises taxes, particularly hits seniors particularly hard. But at the same time, it jeopardizes funding for public safety and education. And the worst part about it is it doesn't even fix the roads, because the proposal won't even get phased in until the year 2021, which is 6 years from now. And obviously everybody in Michigan knows that we need the roads fixed now, not 6 years from now. And as I said, it jeopardizes funding for important services, because about half of the funding that's to be phased in is to come from the existing budget. But the Republican majority that passed the plan has not identified where those dollars are going to come from, where those cuts are going to come from, and every fiscal expert in Lansing, including the nonpartisan House Fiscal Agency that's in charge of doing our budgeting in the House of Representatives, agree that there's no way to come up with that kind of money without cutting from education, without cutting revenue sharing to local communities, and local communities rely on that to put police officers on the street and keep firefighters on the job. And so I think this is a very serious problem, and it really is about the legislature trying to pretend to do something when in fact this isn't even going to fix the problem.
Well, I think the money would come from, next week or a couple of weeks from now. Santa Claus is going to bring some money.
I like that. Possible.
This is what that plan depends on. So if every year Santa Claus brings some money, I think there's something that a lot of people ask: why do we have bad roads in Michigan?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of factors. One of the things that I've said repeatedly is that part of the reason is that we have the highest weight limits for commercial trucks in the country by far.
The double trailers and...
That's exactly right. And we have more than twice as high a weight limits as the vast majority of other states, including our neighbors. And that takes a serious toll on the roads. We also have lower fees.
Before we go on that, just for the benefit of our listeners, what that means is that when trucks are very heavy, they tear up the roads. And we're talking about big, large trucks and double trailers that transport building materials and others. And again, when they're very heavy, they just, tear up the roads because they're not really designed for that.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And the heavier the trucks, the more damage they do to the roads. And the fact is that trucks pay very little of the overall amount of money we use to fund our roads, and yet trucks do a majority of the damage to the roads. And that's obviously unfair to let them off the hook when the rest of us who drive passenger cars end up footing the bill.
Absolutely.
And so we've pushed to lower the weight limits. Unfortunately, the Republican majority wasn't willing to go along with us on that. But the other problem is we do spend less on our roads than other states do. We have we still have the lowest per capita spending on roads. Per person, we spend less on roads than all but one other state in the country.
Here's another thing is the fact that Michigan does not rank pretty high when it comes to money from Washington to fix roads. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a great point, and we have long trailed other states in how much money we get back from Washington, D.C.
What are we, like number 46 or something?
Well, I don't know the exact ranking offhand, but some states get more back from Washington than they send to Washington. Michigan, historically, for many years, has gotten less back than we've sent to Washington. That gap has closed somewhat, but we're still getting less back here in Michigan than we give to Washington, and we need to change that. I know that we have some senators and congresspeople in both parties who are fighting to change that. But the other challenge, too, is that we have not had a long-term transportation funding package put in place in Washington, D.C. in many, many years. It's been over 10 years since we had a transportation budget at the federal level that goes beyond just 2 years. And so in terms of allowing states to plan and count on how much federal money they're going to get, that doesn't get the job done. We need a long-term, permanent plan that goes out at least 10 years into the future at the federal level so that Michigan and other states can plan appropriately.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go out for a quick commercial break,
yes.
and we will go back with also open doors for our listeners to join our conversation. I think we have one listener, he'd like to join us after the quick commercial break. So stay tuned, please.
Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
Welcome back to our show. Today we have our dear State Rep Greimel, and we have one of our listeners really wants to join. And caller, go ahead, please.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry. Raise your voice a little bit, please. I can barely hear you. Go ahead, please. Hello?
You can use this.
I think, yeah. Hello?
Okay, I'll put you on hold.
We
Okay,
like him.
that's fine.
Okay. I think
Well,
he was
get
really
back.
has a
He can keep
concern. Okay. He has a concern about the road and the way it's gonna be really fixing it, and he's not agreeing on the plan. They already really started. So, what's the solution for this? If we wanna simply address it to our listeners.
Well, we as Democrats in the state legislature start with the premise that whatever we do has to actually fix the problem. And unfortunately, the caller is absolutely right that the plan that was just passed is not going to fix the problem. It's not even phased in for another 6 years. And in the meantime, the roads are going to get worse and worse and worse over the coming 3 and 4 years. And so whatever we do has to actually fix the problem. There's nothing worse than some further Band-Aid approach or short-term approach that doesn't actually fix the roads. And how to do that, I think we start with having these heavy commercial trucks pay their fair share. We need to lower the truck weight limits. We need to increase fees and fines on overweight trucks. And then I think we have to come up with a system of funding the roads that is fair to everybody. We've seen big corporations get huge tax cuts in recent years, and we should cut out on the corporate welfare that's been lavished on corporations and just take back a small amount of the giant corporate tax cuts that have been lavished on corporations over the past 4 years.
You know, it doesn't matter what it is when we talk about these issues, and we always get the answer is you know, we need to do this and we do that. So, and the question is, why don't we do it? Why don't we just you know? I mean, there's problems in Washington, there's problems in Lansing. Legislators getting things done, and with all due respect, you know, we elect you to go there to get things done. So why don't we do it? What is the problem?
Well, I share your frustration, and it's particularly baffling when one party controls all of the branches of government. And at the state level here in Michigan, the Republican Party has the governorship, it has a majority in the state house, it has a majority, a large majority, an overwhelming majority in the state Senate. It even has a majority on the state Supreme Court. And they've held those majorities for 5 years now. And they control the agenda. They control everything in terms of what is even brought up for a vote on the House and Senate floor, in terms of what's allowed to be brought up for a vote in committee. And so we have consistently pushed for a real long-term road funding solution, but the Republican majorities that get huge amounts of contributions from the trucking industry and from corporations have really dug in their heels and have said that they don't want to do anything that's actually going to raise the revenue necessary to fix the roads. The Republicans don't want to do anything that's going to lower truck weights for trucks. They're not willing to do anything to make corporations pay their fair share, and it's been a very frustrating experience for we Democrats who have been in the minority in Lansing.
So, you know, I mean, they're not here to really defend themselves, and I understand that they're the majority, but what could the Democrats do right now?
Yeah. Well, we have expressed repeatedly our desire and willingness to work with Republicans to try to get a good road funding plan done. We had a lot of discussions with them, hoping that it would bring about a good road funding plan, and so we met with them for months, trying to see if we could get them to agree to something that would actually fix the problem. And I haven't given up hope on that. Obviously, this plan passed.
I hope not.
and it's not a good plan. But you know, my hope is that over the next year or two, we can try to fix this, because the reality is that unless we revisit this topic, the roads are not going to get any better.
Exactly.
And so I'm hoping that we can get together again, Democrats and Republicans alike, on a bipartisan basis, and get down to work and come up with a bipartisan approach that will actually fix the roads.
The way it was supposed to work.
Exactly.
We have a caller?
We have a caller, and we have a really hot topic to speak
Sure.
about regarding the Syrian refugees, and I'm positive most of our listeners will be interested in discussing this soon. So let's take the caller, please. Okay.
Go ahead, caller.
Yes, my name is Nick Kobaitari from Lawrence, Michigan.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good
Yes.
morning. I need to know what is the decision behind the fact that he's not going to allow the Syrian refugees to come in, and they are so desperate. You know, there are some of us here who are good citizens with families on a TPS visas who have left their families overseas, and the family need to be reunited with them. They got businesses here, and nobody seemed to be concerned, you know.
Good morning, and thank you for your call. You know, this has been a very serious concern to me, and I know many people. I want to first emphasize that the governor of any state, including Michigan, really has no authority to prevent refugees from coming here. The admission of refugees or any immigrants to the United States is purely a federal matter. States have no control over that. And once refugees or other immigrants are here, there's nothing that a state can do to prevent them from coming to that state. And so, you know, it's disappointing that I think the governor here in Michigan made some very rash comments initially that indicated an unwelcoming attitude. But the reality is that there's nothing that the state can do to prevent folks from coming to Michigan. And I've said all along that, yes, absolutely, the federal government needs to do an appropriate and thorough job of vetting refugees and making sure there are no security risks. That's very, very important. But if the federal government does that, then we should be a welcoming place for refugees and all immigrants. I think that's only going to benefit the state of Michigan and benefit all of our communities within the state of Michigan.
Well, I even wrote President Obama a letter about a year and a half ago, and he told me that this is an immigration issue. I understand it's an immigration issue, but we are a civilized country who promote, you know, human rights and stuff. And to see the butchering of the people and the way they're going through, you know, the suffering and stuff, I mean, we should a little bit. Yeah, I agree with you. We should have a better screening. Our screening process does not even exist, I can tell you that. But you can get people from the Middle East, but just look at those people, I can tell whether they are up to something, you know.
Well, there's no question that we need to implore our best instincts and the best parts of our humanity and our compassion and be a welcoming place for those who are in distress from around the world. And, of course, that's what the United States was founded upon. You know, we just celebrated Thanksgiving, of course, and, of course, the Pilgrims came here essentially as refugees from Europe. All four of my grandparents were immigrants here, and I'm a second-generation American now. And immigration has been the lifeblood of our country. Our diversity makes us stronger. It makes us the great country that we are. And we need to continue to be a compassionate country that is welcoming to people around the world.
Thank you, caller. Thank you, caller, for your comment. Do you have any other questions here, please?
Yes, I have one more question. How would you go by getting his family over here? He has 3 young girls and his wife stranded in Algeria, you know.
Yeah, I think the best bet is to contact your federal congressperson and your U.S. senators. Obviously, they're at the federal level, and it's the federal government that controls immigration. And typically, if you contact them with these kinds of concerns, they will look into the matter and try to assist in any way that they can. So I don't know exactly where you live or who your congressperson is. Your U.S. senators, of course, are Gary Peters and Debbie Stabenow here in Michigan. And depending on where you live, you should probably reach out to your local congressperson as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks for your call.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's really great to know that the state is not going to have any authority to prevent those refugees to come here. I mean, most of the Syrian really being who does have family, possibly they apply to come to the United States, that they might be effective. So do you think this is really, if the refugees arrive and they want to come to state of Michigan, there is nothing really in any governor really role to welcome them or prevent them? Is it really going to be a fact here, or it is a debate, sir?
Well, I think even Governor Snyder has acknowledged that there's nothing that a state can do to prevent folks from coming here once they're admitted to the country. You know, the governor had said for many months that he welcomed Syrian refugees here. And then it was in the wake of the Paris tragedy that he came out and made some, I think, rash comments. He then, since then, over the course of the past week or two, has backtracked somewhat from those initial rash comments that he made after the Paris attacks. And, you know, again, I have said all along that absolutely we need to properly screen folks and we need to prevent any risk to security. Everybody agrees on that. There's really no debate about that. But if that occurs, we should be a welcoming state, we should be a welcoming country, and we should be welcoming as local communities here in Michigan as well.
And I think the federal government is really doing a great effort to screen everyone. I mean, background checks, it takes years so far for some Syrians to come to the United States. It's not really something they ignore it, and we want to make sure that our safety comes first, absolutely.
Well, it's very true, and the process for screening refugees in particular is more strict and more stringent than the screening of any other immigrants, and in fact is a very rigorous process that takes between 18 months and 2 years.
Absolutely.
And yes, we should always review that process and make continuing improvements to it, and that's very important. But I think it's important for people to know that there is a very rigorous process in place.
Even for 10,000 maybe refugees or 25,000 refugees, this is really a small number. If we want to compare this to the crisis right now, we've seen other nationalities, United States, open more doors for them to come to United States. I wanted to know why the United States really government lock to help more the crisis. If you think this is true, according to so many questions I received after the quick commercial break, we will continue our discussion. So
sounds great.
Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
Most people who sit in my office across from my desk are hurting on so many levels. One thing people do not know about medical malpractice is that the statute of limitation, meaning the time that you have to bring suit against a doctor, a hospital, is 2 years. In medical malpractice, that's a very short period of time. Not every lawyer is an advocate, but every lawyer should be an advocate.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
I would like to welcome our dear attorney, Joumana Kayrouz, who really joined our conversation today. Good morning, Joumana. Mrs. Kayrouz, good morning.
I know I am the sponsor of this 1 hour and am supposed to be there for the full hour, but I do apologize. I had a conflict this morning and I'm already running late. Good morning, everybody. Senator, good morning.
Good morning, Joumana.
How are
it's
you,
great
sir?
to hear your voice. Good.
I'm sorry that I missed you this morning. Mr. Hachem, good morning. Laila, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I caught the last 20 minutes of that discussion about roads, about the Syrian refugees. It's a wonderful discussion this morning. I don't see why I would be here at all, Laila.
Of course we need you here. I mean, are you kidding, Mrs. Kayrouz? I think the discussion will be much more interesting when you join us, and I'm sure that you have some questions to Mr. Greimel.
Well, I have a couple of comments. I want to add to the Senator's reflections on the road and the decrepit state of the road. From the standpoint of a personal injury attorney, I vehemently agree with him about the need to reduce the weight on these trucks. You don't know how many injury preventions we can get to if the weight on these trucks on the road and the number of hours they can be on the road is decreased. So I want to agree with him on this one. On the question of the Syrian refugees, yes, Laila, like the Senator has said, it's a federal matter. The state has no jurisdiction. It cannot, reject or accept refugees. It's a federal matter. It's a foreign policy matter. It's an immigration matter. And you know that there is a bill in Congress right now that tightens things, not surprisingly, in the wake of what happened in Paris and with the discovery of one of the alleged attackers having a Syrian passport and having allegedly gone through some of the lax countries, I believe Greece, if I'm not mistaken. So there is always a backlash like that, Laila. It is sad. And now I think
if I may say, Attorney Kayrouz,
I think Homeland Security and FBI security, 2 levels of security.
If may I really interrupt and say that it is really big possible that passports will be it's fake, and it's been reported for the independent. They say that it is really possible to be fake.
Nobody knows. This could be. This can be a fake passport. This can be a real passport. Does that mean that all Syrians are like that? Osama bin Laden did what he did. Does that mean that all Arabs are like that? Unfortunately, the reality of it is, and I'm not at all surprised, when I heard about the sad Paris attacks, I knew things were going to get tougher here in the United States as far as who's admitted and the levels of scrutiny that they're going to go through. That's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. Why 10,000 refugees? I mean, that's a drop in a bucket. I know my home country, Lebanon, has welcomed how many? 900,000 so far, Laila?
Right.
Correct me on the number. And it's a teeny, weeny little country. We are a global world, and we should help each other. Yes, our security comes first. You will not welcome anybody in your home, Laila, unless you reasonably felt and you took all, necessary steps to make sure that the person you are welcoming into your home will not, impinge or infringe on your safety. So I think, like the Senator said, no 2 people disagree on that. Sad. What can I say? It's very sad.
Well, you got promoted to a senator.
I was just going to make the same joke. I appreciate your attempt to promote me, Joumana, but I'm just a state representative, not a senator.
While you're at it, maybe we can promote you to a president. You know? That would be a shortcut to the White House.
Well, I did encourage Attorney Kayrouz so much to apply to any government of position, and I think we're still going to approach her. What do you think, Mr. Greimel? I think she will be great.
No.
I think you would be a great elected official, Joumana, and I hope that you'll run for office.
Thank you. You know, you can serve wherever you are, and you can bloom wherever you are planted. You do not need to be an elected official to do everything you can every single day. Every single day, the Lord puts things in front of you, and you do the best you can, and you serve, and it's all good.
Well, it's true, and you do a lot of good in your current role, helping people who have been injured and other people who have suffered very serious accidents, and you're there to help them make sure that they get the compensation they need.
Thank you, sir. I know that there are a lot of callers, and I do not want to take any precious time away. So I just wanted to welcome you. I wanted to apologize for not being there. Being there today will have involved changing the schedule of 7 other people. And you can only imagine thinking 7 calendars. That will take weeks. So my apologies for that.
Oh, no problem.
Laila and Mr. Hachem, I know you guys are fabulous, doing a wonderful job. Thank you, sir, for coming. I know your time is very valuable.
Great to talk with you, Joumana, and thank you for calling in.
The pleasure is all mine. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Joumana, for the very nice comments here, and I would like really to comment on some of the points she mentioned right now. Please, Mr. Greimel.
Yeah, well, I think what Joumana has said is absolutely correct. She started out, of course, talking about the roads, and I was focusing on the damage that heavy trucks do to the roads, but as Joumana pointed out, it's also a safety hazard because the heavier the truck, the more momentum they have, and it can pose very serious risk to other motorists. In terms of the Syrian question, I think what Joumana has said is correct about the enormity of the refugee crisis and the human tragedy. And the fact that the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Turkey, and Jordan in particular, have taken on an enormous number of refugees. I would also note that even Germany, I think, has been on track to take 800,000 refugees from Syria by the end of this year, and it has a population of something like 80 million people. So proportional to its population, that would be equivalent to the United States taking something like 3.2 million Syrian refugees. Obviously, nobody is suggesting that, but I think it's important that people keep in perspective the number of 10,000 Syrian refugees in the United States and how it compares to the burden that a number of other countries, certainly the neighboring countries, but also Germany, have taken on.
Ideally, when it comes to the refugees, the best thing to do for them is to stop the war so they can stay where they are. And the issue that a lot of people try to ignore is that once refugees leave a country, they never go back. This is a brain drain, and this is far more dangerous to Syria than the war itself. And since we're not doing enough to really stop the war, and if people are in distress, it just only makes sense to really help as much as possible. Even if we don't want to allow them to come to different countries, at least we need to improve the conditions where the refugees are, whether in Lebanon and Turkey and Jordan and all of these places, and then hasten the work to really stop the war. Because if you don't stop the bleeding, no matter what you do, you're not really helping. A lot of people are caught up in the emotional aspect of refugees, and they're forgetting the main cause, the main issue, which is stopping the war. The other thing is that it is true that the states, Michigan and 24 other states, really don't have the legal, and this is very important, the legal power to stop immigrants from coming to the state. But it does, their saying no contributes to the overall atmosphere of we don't want to welcome refugees. It's more politically damaging than legally damaging. And after, one thing we also need to keep in mind is that it is true that states don't have much to say when it comes to refugees, but states will have to pick up the bill of helping these refugees being settled here. So it is an impact on states, So we need to separate the politics from the actual issue from what we really need to do, which is, the main issue, which is trying to stop the war. And I hope that we do more to do that.
Well, that's a very good point. And I want to first touch on your last point. I think it's important actually to know that there really is not an expense to the state of having refugees.
Not immediate. Not immediate.
The federal government provides a lot of assistance and resettlement assistance for refugees. So certainly the federal government allocates funding for it. But I think in the short and the long term, it's actually a benefit to states to accept them.
Absolutely. And I have to agree with you. Thank you so much for pointing this out. Most of the Syrians really, I'm not saying all of them, but most of them is really educated. And they can work. All they're looking for is safety and just to have a safe place for them and their children within continuous of the crisis back home. And I think if I may touch base on the meeting, the pleasure meeting you during the first screen of Little Gandhi. I mean, you've seen that the revolution back home started like peacefully, and people just ask as any normal right for them, that they ask just for a little freedom and live in, and they can practice normal life with no fear. So obviously shifting after this is really now it's a disaster by interfering or different parts. I'm not going to get into this. It is very complicated. But I want you to comment on the Little Gandhi really screening, and it was really interesting to me to see this part. Myself, I wasn't aware about it.
Yeah. Well, the Little Gandhi documentary was very moving, and I had heard much of what was portrayed in the movie over the past 4.5 or so years. I've been following the Syrian civil war quite closely since the outbreak of the Arab Spring there. But seeing it on the film, on screen, really was particularly moving and really drives home the point that this is a catastrophe of Assad's making, that these were peaceful protesters who simply wanted basic freedoms and democracy, and that it was the Assad regime's brutal crackdown on them that led to the ultimate violence in the country. And
actually, that's not totally true. It didn't start like that, and there was a lot of demonstrations, and what really made the change in Syria is that the opposition declared war, and then the demonstrations turned violent after Friday prayers a few months after the beginning of the demonstrations, and it became a war between all these factions and the government. And any government has the right to really enforce the law, whether we agree with it or not. So this is, I just want to make this point clear, is that a few months into the revolution, if that's what I want to call it, it turned violent from both sides. And it's really unfortunate, because now the innocent people are really paying the price. So.
Well,
I'm not defending.
I urge you to see a little Gandhi, and then you're going to realize that you're missing some facts. As I missed it, and I think there's a part here. We don't want to go to the
it's very easy to blame different government for what happened.
I'm trying to focus here on the humanitarian crisis, but it is really. I guess it's a fact, really, it's missing for most of our listeners, and maybe my colleague Khalil, really, he's missing this part, because I believe strongly it was peaceful, but it's shifted because so many parties really have the influence to get through it, and it's out of control, and now, regardless of what we witnesses there, we need to help in the humanitarian situation. This is our main focus right now, and I think this is really what we're looking for our government. It's really to take a bigger standard to hold those it's really being misplaced. What do you think?
Well, I fundamentally agree that the real tragedy here are the innocent civilians who are caught in the middle of all of this. And certainly the highest priority should be bringing a just peace to Syria. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And so ultimately that's what I think all parties want to see happen. And the situation has only become more complicated in recent months with the involvement now of Russia alongside other foreign countries that have been involved there. My hope is that through this peace process that's ongoing right now, and I don't know that it's yet appropriate to call it a peace process, but these discussions, I think that including Russia and Iran alongside Saudi Arabia and Turkey and the United States makes sense. It's important for all interested parties to be a part of these discussions, and my hope is that a just peace can be born out of that process. I do think that any long-term peace is going to require the removal of Assad ultimately, but ultimately that's for negotiations between the parties who are involved.
Well, we're going to go out for a quick commercial break, and then we can open also more calls to our listener at 248-557-3300.
Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
It's sad, but it seems like we live in an age where most lawyers are focused on the bottom line, the money. And a lot of people have stopped wanting to truly advocate. I'll never forget this case. This woman chose me as a lawyer of last resort. She was hit by a semi-truck. I was able to recover about $480,000. Not every lawyer is an advocate, but every lawyer should be an advocate.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
Welcome to our show, and we really have a great discussion here with our state representative, Greimel, and I think we have one of our listeners, Jerry. Go ahead and please make it short. Hello?
Good morning, Laila. Good morning, Mr. Hachem.
How are you?
Thank you for taking my call, and I want to also salute the Honorable Representative, Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray, thank you for your service. This is Jerry Haba. And what I would try to say over here, sir, that the security of the United States, yes, coming first before anything. And in the meantime, I'm looking to Detroit. 50 years ago, Detroit population was over a million, or 1.5 million. And look right now, the greater Detroit, only 900,000. I do believe, to my opinion, not 10,000 refugees, but Detroit could absorb 100,000 refugees. And this is what built this country, like you said a few minutes ago. America was built by immigrants. And that's what makes America the multi-part between all the nationalities. And let's the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. come to the refugees too. Everybody have a dream. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And of course, we would like you to comment on his. I mean, I pretty much agree with Jerry. This is really facts. And
yeah, thank you for your call, Jerry. I appreciate you calling in. Good morning to you. There's no question that immigration in general is a very important way to reverse population decline in a number of central cities, not just here in Michigan, but across the country. If you look at New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles, the reason why they have had a relatively stable population in recent years is because of the number of immigrants who have located there. And so certainly immigration plays a very important role in boosting economic growth and reversing population decline. I think that immigration from all countries in the world should be welcomed as long as obviously people are properly screened, and I think everyone agrees on that.
Well, not only that is that the United States has a responsibility to deal with this issue because the U.S. did help create what ISIS is today. The U.S. created the environment to create ISIS. And this is something very important. The other thing is that I don't think we have the right to tell the Syrians what kind of government they should have. We've had dysfunctional government in Washington for years now and in the States, and nobody's telling us what kind of government to have. We shouldn't really tell Syrians what kind of government to have.
Well, trying to stay away from the this is not this is a humanitarian debate,
and
not
do
political
that,
debate.
Exactly,
Khalil.
but since
trying
we do
to stay
that,
away from doing this.
Well, they're all connected. They're all connected.
I don't think so. I mean,
Yes.
we need bigger really.
No, they're all
time
connected.
really
And
to
since
the-
the U.S. is responsible for some of the mess in Syria, the U.S. not only based on a humanitarian, but also on other issues, which is the U.S. should help the refugees right now.
Well, first of all, I strongly agree that what government any country has should be up to the people in that country.
People in that country.
Obviously, that requires free and fair elections so that people in that country have a true choice as to what government represents them. In terms of, I think all countries in the world have a moral obligation to be compassionate and to welcome people who don't pose a security threat, who are in trouble from abroad. I don't think there's any question about that. And certainly I think the invasion of Iraq back in 2003 did bring some instability to that region in retrospect. I don't think there's any question about that, if that's what you're alluding to.
Well, I'm alluding to the fact that we did help create the environment in Syria for ISIS to thrive, and this is one of the reason it aggravated the issue. But to really focus and continue focusing on the refugee issue is, again, we're responsible for that, and we need to help. Not only just look around and see what we can do. Whether we help here or we help overseas, we have the responsibility to help the Syrian refugees right now.
I guess strongly, Mr. Greimel, of course, is it the solution to work on create a peaceful situation right now in Syria? It's beneficial for everyone, and leave it up to the Syrian really to work in it. But without intervention from other countries, this is really, it's hard to do it right now, because obviously it's so many countries right now interfere, and it's not in the hand of the Syrian anymore if we want to make it this. But now we do have a situation that we need to help more Syrians. Recent announcement from congressmen, they visited recently the refugees in Jordan. They really asked United States to replace the Syrian to United States, or calling for that. Why they don't really do much more and give more assistance to the government in Amman, in Lebanon or Turkey? How do you view this?
Well, it's a good point in that there are countries that are taking huge numbers of refugees from Syria, and the United States and other countries in the world can do more to financially assist those countries who are housing enormous numbers of refugees. And certainly that's an alternative to the United States or other countries directly accepting the refugees themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what we've been doing is we're using the excuse, we don't like Assad, we're not going to help Syrians in Jordan and Syria and Lebanon and other places, and again, not to harp on the issue, is I think the Syrians deserve a better government, but right now they deserve immediate help. Living conditions for these children, for the women, there are a lot of places where children can't go to school. They can't even get the basics. There was an image the other day on Facebook, a man sitting with his 3 children, and he's sobbing, crying, because he could only provide a small piece of bread to 3 children, and he's crying. There's nothing he can do. And he's in a refugee camp, and there's nothing he can do. I mean, it's heartbreaking. And then we're sitting here debating whether this guy should go and that guy should go, what kind of government. If we wanted to do it right, we could have done it right a long time ago. R2P, which is a provision of the United Nations, allowed us from day one to negotiate the exit of Assad and installing a different government, and didn't have to get to this point. But what we did in Syria is we wanted to create a zone where we thought that all the bad guys can fight each other, and then we can just sit there and watch. And it didn't work out that way. So right now, it's imperative that we do whatever we can. You know, the United Nations can do so much. How many times, Laila, did we talk about what the United Nations can and cannot do, and they're unable to do?
With the lack of funding, I guess, from most of the countries,
exactly.
it's really
We're not
hard,
even paying the United Nations.
We have
Yeah.
a tragedy right now, I guess.
Absolutely.
I mean, more than 4 million or 5 million
5 million, yeah.
Syrians outside. I mean, it's really hard to accept them all to Europe or United States. I understand, but also open doors for 10,000 refugees only. That's even, it's very minor according to other nationalities had practiced same issues. So why do you think we're running out of time that United States government is not really being more open to welcome more refugees? I mean, it is even 10,000 or 25,000. It's nothing really comparing to other countries had happened same issues with it.
Well, I don't want to speculate in terms of why some people are not more welcoming. Obviously, despite or perhaps because of our rich history of immigration, there have been periodic backlashes against immigration in general. You know, obviously, we've seen some amount of backlash even against the idea of accepting 10,000 Syrian refugees. So I want to just emphasize that I agree with the comments that have been made, that we have an obligation, and the world community has an obligation to assist those in need, and that should include providing financial assistance to the refugees where they are currently, including in Jordan and Lebanon and Turkey. I don't think there's any question about that.
I mean, we're not just talking about, you know, providing clothing. We're talking about providing necessary, I mean, medicine. basic stuff, food, you know, and then you have the psychological aspect that we have to deal with. We have to help these people with that. You know, I lived under occupation. I lived in a war zone. This is not just a camping trip and it'll end in a week. You know, this is a horrible situation where we just had last week. Was it last week? We had an interview with one of the doctors who went to Turkey to interview and work on with the refugees. These they call them urban refugees. They're not really in camps. And she was talking about the psychological impact on the children, where they're becoming de facto adults. They're 14 and 15, and now they have to take care of their families because either their parents died or they can't join them. I mean, we're talking about one of the biggest disasters, human disasters in recent history, and we're sitting here debating, you know, just small issues that are really not relevant to the immediate issue, whether here or overseas.
Well, the scale of the tragedy is enormous, truly enormous, and you're absolutely right that the impact on the individual refugees is, I think, beyond the comprehension of most Americans, because the degree of need, the degree of suffering, the degree of poverty is staggering. And, of course, we're talking about 5 million externally displaced people, plus even more internally displaced people in the city of Syria, in the country of Syria itself. And of course, these folks are fleeing, in many cases, ISIS, in some cases the Assad regime, in other cases the other rebel groups. But they are people who are in dire need and simply want to live in peace with their families.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's really continuous discussion, Mr. Greimel, and we thank you so much for coming and open doors to more discussion with our listeners. And I guess the conflict in Syria is not going to end with 1 hour. We need more hours and more efforts from all parties to end this crisis and this is the solution for the Syrian. Absolutely. Until that happens, I guess we need to show more support to the refugees, not only Syrian, what's going on right now in Yemen and all those really countries really struggling and suffering. And if you may, maybe your final comment for you, I really appreciate it. Just listen, have a minute.
30 seconds.
Well, I just want to say it's been an honor to be on the show. Thank you both for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for our listeners. We will go back with you next week. And thanks for Attorney Joumana Kayrouz for really her comment. And thanks for all our listeners for listening. Bye-bye.